Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome back to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm Jared Flo.
Thanks for joining us again this week. So today we are breaking down the three types of labor that your company can have. No matter what type of company you are, there's three types that you can have. And so we're going to talk through each of them and listen out for the type of company you run, whether you're a trade company, a general contractor, a builder. There's all sorts of companies that this applies. Really, it's every company this applies to.
Yeah, in different forms, times, wherever.
Not just in construction, but across the world. But we're going to talk about the three types of labor that you can use to do the work that you're doing. And so we're going to break those down, talk about what they are, when to utilize what's best for your style of company, and kind of give you some guidance on that. So, jumping right in, the three types, and I'm just going to lay them out in the beginning, then we'll kind of talk through each of them. The first one is in-house labor, right? I'm hiring a W-2 employee that's going to be working labor for my company. Whatever I'm doing, they're going to be working for me as a W-2 employee. I'm buying their time. Yeah. They might have some sort of bonus structure, but at the end of the day,
you own their time, you own their schedule.
It's either hourly, daily, or salary, but they're in-house that I am in charge of getting them to do the work that they need to do.
Right.
Second, subcontractors, 1099 labor. I'm subbing out my jobs to different labor guys, and they're going out running jobs. I'm holding them accountable, and this is more of the contractor. As a general contractor, I am contracting out to subcontractors, and so this is more of I am managing a company, and I am in charge of the customer service, customer care, and I'm subbing out and controlling how the 1099 labor executes their work.
Right.
The third type is, and we separate this one out ourselves, and this is where it's a little different. Invoicing vendors. And so invoicing vendors are the same thing technically as subs.
They're 1099.
Yep, and they're the same thing. But we separate out subs and invoicing vendors, and we'll talk about that as we get into it. But the invoicing vendor to us is a company that goes out, does the work, and sends us an invoice for the work that's done.
Right.
They are specialty trades. They do their own thing. Subcontractors are guys that we are telling this is the pricing that we've got pre-built for it. And so we're going to dive into that. We've covered subs a little bit before, but we're really defining why and when to use which in this podcast.
And how to maximize the use of them.
How to maximize it. And there's not a right or wrong for any of these. There's a smarter way depending on the way your company's set up.
And what stage your business is in and all that. Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. In-house labor. For us as a general contractor, in-house labor we feel is the hardest and most expensive way to go. As a specialty trade company, in our HVAC company, in-house labor is the way to go. Right. So there's not a right or wrong in terms of...
It's actually more difficult to subcontract it out.
Oh, yeah. So we'll talk about the difference of those. So in-house labor, as a general contractor, I started my company swinging a hammer, putting sheetrock up, framing some walls, bringing some guys in. They're helping me out. Me and my two dudes are going in, finishing a basement out together, and we keep growing the company that way. So we see a lot of general contracting companies, not contracting companies, but they're actually in-house labor companies. Right. They're not contracting anything. They're going out and signing an estimate with the homeowner and then doing all the work themselves with their employees. A general contractor is someone that uses subcontractors to do the work. And so a lot of times what we see are these general contracting companies, these guys that are starting with basements and kitchens and exteriors and that sort of thing, that have a ton of in-house labor because that's the way it started when I was running it.
Right.
And so I just added a guy, then added another guy, and all of a sudden I've got 14 dudes that are all on staff with me that are all of my labor.
Well, and also it's I would say at least 80% of the people that we talk to on a regular basis that are coming in talking about coaching, maybe want to come into coaching or whatever, have W-2 on staff labor, people swinging hammers that they're paying
my plumber, my
hourly,
electrician,
they're
my
paying
framer.
a salary, whatever it is. Most of them have, and definitely most of them have the stereotypical the runner,
punch guy,
the punch guy.
Yep.
If I don't have any work for him to do, he's going and dragging a trailer over to the house and pulling trash out, and going and getting supplies and whatever, right? But that gives you it feels like control.
Yeah.
Right, it feels like you've got control of that person, and it's a better way of going and all this stuff. It's a false sense of control.
Yeah.
You may feel like you have control, but you don't have control of the cost that it's taking for you to actually keep that person on staff.
That's right. And so, what does that mean? Let's dive deeper into that. So, the cost of an in-house labor person is a bunch of different things that are hidden, right? Mm-hmm. So, if I've got an in-house guy, I'm paying his salary. Or whatever his cost of daily labor is. I'm paying for the vehicle, for the gas. I've got insurance now, and insurance is 3 times as high because I've got in-house labor as opposed to subs with their own insurance.
Workers' comp is not cheap.
No, it's not, and general liability goes up as well. So there's a lot more expenses of having that W-2.
I might have a cell phone. I might have a computer. I might, there's a lot of different things that shirts and T-shirts and taxes and
employee tax. You've got once they leave and they file unemployment, you're paying into that. There's a lot of different hidden expenses with in-house labor. So someone might say, well, if I hired a sub, I'd have to pay him $500 to do this. But my in-house guy, I'm only paying him $200 a day,
right,
and he's getting this knocked out. Well, let's talk about averages over time. Are you keeping him busy 5 days a week where you would have had to pay $500 a day to a sub?
Right.
Or would it, you paid, is he doing really $1,500 of work a week that you would have paid to a sub?
I get a week like we've just had where it's rained nonstop all day, every day.
Yep. And so I'm still covering about $1,000 that week for my sub, or I'm sorry, for my in-house labor, but gas and overhead and expenses are still there.
Right.
And so I'm spending more on that. Secondarily, if I have a subcontractor that I'm subbing work to, I've got a quote with the amount of money I'm going to pay the guy for that work. So if I say, I'm not paying a sub by day, I'm not going to pay a sub by hour, I'm going to pay a sub by job, by bid. So I say, okay, a subcontractor on this job, I'm going to pay this handyman $1,000 to do
whatever
this amount of work.
Right.
My in-house guy, here's your work to do. It's $200 a day. Let me know when it's done. What's stopping him from going home early? What's stopping him from taking that 2-hour lunch? What's stopping him from getting on his phone and playing on it? It's me babysitting.
Yeah.
So not only am I paying him for his time, now I'm losing my time making sure that he gets the work done on time.
Right.
I'm checking in with him. I'm calling him. I'm spending 2 to 3 hours a day making sure all of my W-2 employees are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And that's the tangible stuff. The intangible stuff are the things you can't control.
Yeah.
Right. I got to pay a guy. I'm paying him this amount per day.
Yeah.
And he got out there and he started doing some of the work and then left to go to get supplies. And when he left to go to get supplies, his truck broke down. And the whole rest of the day, he's trying to figure out how to do the thing. I pay him $200 a day. Right. So I'm paying him for that and I'm delaying and it's delaying. And then the next day he gets out there and it's exterior paint. It's raining all day. Right. Yeah. Well, my agreement with him is that I'm paying him $200 a day. And so it creeps in. And one of the other problems with that is, and this is why we say in-house labor is a decent and probably a great idea for trades companies. In the general contracting world, there's not a lot of meat on the bone to have you as the owner, the manager, an employee staff person, subcontractors. There's not enough money to go around when you can charge maybe 30%, 20% normally, 25% somewhere around in there. There's not a lot of money to go around to just be spending extra money. And
in the trades, you're making 50, 60% profit.
Right.
And so there's ability to manage the money and have a manager managing that staff.
Yeah. Well, and the other bleed is if I quoted it's cost me $1,000 to get this thing done, so I'm going to quote to my client $1,800. All right. It's going to cost. I'm going to charge them $1,800, $1,500, whatever it is. Right. if my cost creeps because for whatever reason, tangible or intangible, that cost creeps up and up and up, and all of a sudden I've paid $1,400 to execute the work, and I can't go back to the client and be like, hey, I actually need to charge you $2,800. It's not justifiable.
No.
I mismanaged the time.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying is true. Where if I have a $1,800 job and I have $1,000 budgeted for labor, I can say to my vendor, my subcontractor, there's $1,000. I need you to execute this list of work. They look at it and they agree to it. We're good to go.
Right.
If they don't execute it and if it takes extra time, sorry, they have to do the work for that same amount of price. If it takes them 2 days less than they thought, I don't care. I'm getting $1,800 and I'm paying you $1,000 and you worked quick. I'm not going to penalize you for that.
Right.
But if there's go back work, if there's stuff later, if there's, hey, that failed and I need some warranty, I need you to go back and fix that. I can hold it to my vendor and make sure that they go back and fix that stuff.
Right.
If it's a W-2, I might have only paid him $800 for the work he did, where I had to pay the sub $1,000. But the go back was $200 extra bucks.
Right.
And plus this other thing was a couple $100. Plus this got rained out. And so he ended up spending 2 days on the job when I only wanted him on 1 day for that go back work, to where there is no set cost on anything I'm doing. And what I want to set up my GC company is where I have exactly the cost that it's going to cost me to do the work. That can allow me to build exactly how much I'm going to pay or invoice the customer for and build my estimate for.
Right.
I'm controlling both sides of the costs that are locked in. I'd rather overpay for labor and have it locked in, because then it's not overpaying. That's how much it costs to get done.
Right.
I can mark it up and that profit stays there no matter what. And so that's the part that we're trying to set up as a contractor of, I know exact dollars out, how much to the penny it's going to cost me to get this done. And I know exact dollars in, how much I'm going to get paid to get this work done. Now, as a trade company, I owned an HVAC company for a while. In that side, we had in-house labor because I needed them to drive my truck. I needed them to be trained in how we deal with customers, because there's a lot more customer-facing stuff from the person doing the work and the labor.
Right.
I need them to abide by certain rules and certain regulations. I need them to submit paperwork and be in the software and to upload pictures and all that stuff. And I need them to be able to be dispatched out onto the jobs and own their schedule. You legally can't in the United States do that with a subcontractor.
Right.
So first and foremost, legally you have to set them up as W-2.
Right.
But secondarily, I am in charge of filling their schedule, and I have a manager that's ensuring that they hit those schedules and times right, to where they're executing the work. It's setting it up in a totally different way.
Right.
And so where we see companies really fall apart is they're setting it up kind of both and they're setting up one way to run a different way.
Right.
And so they're setting it up with the W-2 because that's the way that I thought it should run, when in fact you're really hurting yourself because you don't have the systems in place for a W-2 or enough profitability built in for that W-2 to have a manager.
Right. Right.
So
right.
that's kind of the difference. And so like our HVAC company, we had W-2 techs that were running in our vans that any homeowner job they were on. They were our best guys. They got paid really well, and they were making our customers happy. We also had subcontractors that we used for larger stuff when we were working with builders, that we had full neighborhoods, and our in-house guys I needed to expand. Subs, the beautiful part about subs is I'm not committed to them. So I can increase and decrease their load depending on their performance.
Right.
If they're doing really good, then I'm going to give them a lot of work. If they're not, then I'm not going to. And that's my prerogative as using them as a 1099. But if they're W-2, I'm locked in. I've got to carry their paycheck. They can't work for anybody else. They're a W-2 employee of mine. And so I have to make sure that they're making enough money or they're gone.
Right.
And so that's the difficult part of W-2, where 1099, work for other guys, no problem. But I'm going to send those guys, the 1099s, to the new construction properties that I don't have a homeowner there. The processes don't have to be followed as tightly. There's not they're not carrying my face and name on their back when they're on the job site. My face and name on those jobs are on the front end estimating and sales, and the back end double checking, ensuring that the work was done properly.
Well, and I think also what we found with that in the HVAC company, the 1099 guys, the difficulty with 1099 in a specialty trade is that it's a specialty trade.
Yep.
There's a unique, specific way that job is executed. It has to be done this way, or the unit doesn't work. The warranty is voided. It's gonna fail within 3 months. There's a couple of guidelines of things that it just has to be done this way. And when you sub it out, what we found was like we didn't really realize until after HVAC jobs started coming back to us, going, "Hey, this thing failed. It's not working."
Yep.
And we would send the guy who was running that division out there to go look at it, and he'd be like, "Why did they not put this in? I don't understand why they didn't install the plumbing like this or the pipes like this or whatever," right? And so when you've got the W-2, you can control more of that, and you can make sure that you're bringing in and hiring people that have the knowledge to be able to execute the specialty of that trade well.
Well, the last thing, so we're talking about in-house versus 1099 versus W-2.
Yeah.
The next part, we're going to talk about the two different types of 1099s.
Right.
But sticking and finishing out the in-house versus subs, what we've seen in companies and what we've experienced is, I have no problem if you can justify having a W-2 jack of all trades guy that drives a trailer. Here's where the risk is with that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've covered a lot of it with insurance and overhead and expenses and vehicles and all that stuff. But on top of that, the risk of it is what we see is that when I quote a job, I quote it at 30%, 32%, 28%, whatever your company quotes it at, depending on what you're building it at. But I'm going to do demo, I'm going to do install, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. There is no line item set aside for delivery of materials. There's no line item set aside for haul off on what I've seen on a lot of those. There's no line item set aside for punch out work. And so I pay the crew $1,000 to execute job, line item A. Then there's punch out work, and I'm paying my guy to go back and do that. So I didn't pay $1,000 for line item A.
Paid $1,200.
Paid $1,200 because my guy went out and did some punch work around it.
Right.
So I'm losing that cost, and that's not built anywhere. I'm not. If you are very tight, you're going back to the crew saying, "Hey, I'm going to cut your check by $200 so that I pay someone to go fix it."
Yeah.
But no one's doing that.
It's kind of a smoke screen for feeling like, "Oh yeah, I just sent my guy out there and got it done for free. I didn't have to pay anybody to do it."
Yeah.
Right. Even
except for the $60,000 a year you're paying him, plus the trailer, plus the insurance
Yeah.
on the vehicles, plus a great example. I think that we're thinking of the same company that we went to. They had a guy doing this. We added up all the expenses, and they're like, "Oh, we're paying him $50,000 a year." We looked at it. We're like, "You're at $87,000 a year."
We actually looked at them and said, "So we've done calculations on the whole company. Do you know who the highest paid person in the company is?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Who?" Like, old George over there.
Yeah, the guy,
or whatever his name was.
Yeah, the guy that's running the truck. And so they're like, "Yeah, but it was actually one of the owner's brothers." And he was like, "I want to keep him employed. I want to keep him busy, that sort of thing." And that's fine. Well, this is what we're going to do. Because he was driving 2 hours away to a cabinet company because it was cheaper to buy the RTA cabinets and go and buy them and bring them in than if they were hiring a cabinet company to do it locally. And so we said, "No problem. We're just going to have a freight fee for your cabinets. And so we're going to charge $250 for cabinet freight because your cabinets are cheaper than everybody else because you're doing it this way. So that $250 freight fee, we're going to assign over to your brother every time we need him, and he's going to make $200 to go and deliver those a couple hours of driving down there, getting in and coming back."
Right.
Everything else, we're going to have a haul off line, and we're going to assign that out to you, and we're going to make your brother more money by being a 1099 than he is as a W-2. But he's only going to get paid if he's doing work. And like I said a second ago, I want to tie every dollar going out to every $1.50 coming in. And so I don't mind paying your brother. How are we invoicing the customer for that money?
Right.
And so it's a smoke screen, like you said, of, "Oh, I'll just have him cover it." Well, you're losing money by having him cover it because it's not on the invoice. The customer's not paying for that. You are.
Right.
And so that's what we're talking about is it's okay to have the in-house guy, but I need to invoice line items for everything he's doing, because those are expenses on the jobs that are not that are just ghost, right? They're hidden expenses that you're expending, but it's not tied to a P&L showing I'm losing money on this job. So smokescreen is, I made 30% on this job. No, you actually made 18% because you spent all of this extra money on your W-2 guys. So that's the problem with it. Now, again, you can do it that way if you're tying line items to what he's doing, and we're managing anything that I have my W-2 in-house guy doing is listed on the estimate.
Right.
If that's, and you're going back, and if he's doing go back work behind a crew, you're dinging that crew for not completing the job. Great, if you can manage all that. But what we've seen, the tendency is that is just a hole in the bucket where money falls out of. And so that's why we push so hard to get everybody to subs and not do W-2 in a general contracting company.
Well, and another place where there's a loss from having in-house labor needs to be managed every morning.
Yep.
There's you as the owner are directing traffic. You're telling
Monday
them
morning,
what,
6 a.m., everyone show up at the warehouse and we'll figure out who's going where. Yeah.
And you're also getting the phone calls of like, hey, what about this? Where do I go next, boss? What is it? Whatever it is, right? That accumulated time is time that you should have been able to use either earning more business and more money on your side in the work that you're doing, or that's the time that you should be working on the growth of your company, right? The creating systems and processes and all that stuff. So there's a lot of different, leaky buckets, places. You can do it that way. You can manage it that way, but you just need to be cautious and aware of the pitfalls of that scenario.
So that's the difference of in-house W-2 and 1099, right? In-house labor versus subs. Now let's separate the two subs, like we talked about in the beginning. When we talk about the three types of labor, you get the in-house, but the two types of subcontractors in our vernacular is you get your subs and you get your invoicing vendors. So the difference of those two, and this is where we've got some confusion before, is a sub is who I tell how much I'm paying for something.
Right.
Invoicing vendor, I give them a budget. They go out and bid it for me and give me back pricing. So let's separate those two out. A sub, I am not just making up a number and trying to get the guy to show up for that.
Cheap as possible.
Yeah, I want you to frame this whole house for $200. No one's going to say yes to that.
Right.
The way we set our subs up is that I present like I'm the estimator for their company. I have conversations. I know the price points. I know how much the average cost is to frame, how much the average cost is to paint. We pay X dollars per square foot for paint to our subs. Is that okay? Can you do it for that price? Why not? Where should my labor cost be on that? Help me understand. And we form our pricing and almost have a preset agreed upon price with our vendors and our subcontractors as to, listen, for these investment homes, I'm paying X dollars a square foot, but for these high-end homes, I want it done this way, I'm paying this much per square foot. For framing, I'm paying this much by linear foot for this. And so we set up with our vendors how much I think. And one thing that Jared does really well when he's talking with vendors and helping people understand this concept is, I don't know how much the price is out. Well, let's figure it out, right? Let's look at saying, okay, I know this vendor, this crew that I want to use, he brings 3 guys with him, so there's 4 guys out there. They need $1,000. They need $1,500. They need $1,200 a day.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. I have that conversation with them, and then I can assess a property. I've swung a hammer. How many days is this going to take? Well, if I have 4 guys, I can do this amount of work in 2 days. So I know if I pay this crew $3,000 in my budget, they could probably do it for a little less than that, but I'm going to budget $3,000 because I know they can knock this out in 2 days. That takes some knowledge. And so that takes some understanding in the industry. But once you have that down and can have those conversations with your crews and know their price, I don't need to go have them bid it. I am their estimator. So I write an estimate. I say, okay, I know I need that crew for 2 days in here. I know the paint crew's going to come in. They'll need 3 days. And I pay them about $500 a day. So that's $1,500 that I can pay them for this painting this basement. And so I can walk through how much I think I can pay these guys to do it.
To be fair and to get them a good amount of money for their efforts.
I'm assessing the history of working.
I am not trying to undercut people. I'm not trying. And here's some clarity on that. It is our job to land more business. And one of the factors of being able to land business is that we're priced fairly. Right? And so if I get a guy that does some sheetrock and paint. That's what he's great at. And I want to sub some work to him. If I let him dictate to me, hey, I want to charge you this, more times than not, he's going to come back to me with the price that I need to charge my client.
Yeah.
Right? To do this paint, I'm going to charge the client $8,000. And if I let him go, hey, how much is it going to cost me to get this done? He's going to look at it and say, well, I could go to, I did a homeowner house of my own last week and it was about this size and I charged $8,000. So I'm going to charge you $8,000, right? But the problem is that homeowner house that he did on his own, he needs that $8,000 because he did the vetting, he did the finding, he did the estimating, he did the marketing, he did all the things that are
collections, putting his
of
own
the
money
execution
out.
of the work, right? That he needs that money.
Yeah.
When you're working for me, I'm getting paid for doing all of those things.
Yep.
And when you work for us, all you have to do, you get a work order. I've got line items. You show up, you execute, you get paid.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with the clients. You don't have to do any change orders. You literally just show up, execute. So I'm going to pay you for that.
Yep.
And $8,000 is too much. So that's and if I let you say $8,000 and then I put my markup on it and I come up at $11,500 to do this paint work and I send it to the client. Client's like,
No.
what are you, crazy, dude?
Yeah.
So it's my job to land work, and so I have to manage the cost.
And we have that conversation with the vendors. We,
Yeah.
we say, hey, listen, I know you could paint this house for $8,000. I'm charging the client $8,000 to do it. And let me explain to you, when you go and do it with the client, you're doing marketing, you're contacting them, you're doing 3 bids to land 1, you're handling all of that front end. It's a 2-week process for that $8,000 paint job from the front end, and then you're there for 3 days to paint it, and then you got to collect, and they didn't pay you, and now I've got to go pay Home Depot, and I got to pay Sherwin-Williams, and I've got to finally get the money from them.
Yeah.
All of that's a 2-week process, and you're charging $8,000 for that. Great. For us, you're showing up on Monday, you're done by Wednesday. I need no time from you last week.
I'm going to pay you $1,500 a day. You're going to get $4,500 or whatever it is.
And so
and
you
be
still
done.
have Thursday and Friday to do more work. You got last week to do other work. So I'm going to pay you $4,500 where you don't have to do most of the stuff that you hate doing, right? And so
Right.
we have that conversation, and we make sure we when we're taking in vendors and having these conversations, we're kind of letting them know and showing them our pricing and showing them what we like to pay. But you can have different price points, right? I've got 2 tile installers. I can tile the surround of a shower for $800. I can have a vendor do it for $800. I can have a vendor do it for $5,000.
Right.
How nice of a job do you want? And so I'll have those conversations with my client, right? Listen, I've got 2 different levels of tile installer. I've got my handyman that can do tile. He's done tile, does a great job. I got my high-end guy that's been doing tile for 40 years, and that's the only thing he touches. Which one do you want? Because this one, I'm going to have to charge you this. This one, I'm going to have to charge you this. Which one do you want? Or do you care about price and perfection, or cheap and it looks good?
Yeah.
And so we can have that conversation, and I can pay different vendors different things depending on their skill set and depending on what I'm willing to offer my clients. If I don't want to ever offer cheap and decent, great, I'm only going with my high-end installer, and I'm only got these prices for my tile. But it's my decision on what I'm selling my products for as a general contractor.
One of the other things that is a factor most of the time, it's not always this way, but most of the time, a subcontractor that you are dictating to them, you're giving them a work order that says, here's all the work I want you to do, and here's what I'm going to pay you to do it, right? Most of the times, that is a guy that you are using you're keeping busy on a regular basis. You're using him week over week. Sometimes you've got that person, I mean, they're booked out every day for 6 months, but, and sometimes there's a week of, hey, I don't have any work, but I'll get you next week, whatever. But for the most part, they're your go-to. They're the one that you're using on a regular basis, and you keep them busy most of the time. That's the person that you're a subcontractor, and you're dictating to them, all right, this week I got this for you. I've got $7,000 for you. You can get this done, right?
Yeah.
So
that being said, I will send it to my vendor or my subcontractor and say, listen, I've got $4,500 for this paint job. And they can accept or not accept, and they can have that conversation. But the most important side is that conversation happens before we start the job. So if I send them $4,500 to paint this house, and they show up and they say, Clark, this is an 8,000 square foot house. There's no way I can paint this for 45.
Right.
I'll say, oh, I didn't even think about the basement. Is there a basement on this? I didn't realize that. I had this at a 5,000, whatever it is.
Right.
And so I can then at that point go back to my client, hat in hand. It doesn't feel good, but I'm not going to go upside down on the job. I'm going to go to my client and say, hey, listen, I bid this paint for the main level and upstairs. I didn't know you had a basement. I'm going to have to change my pricing. You can back out of the contract, but I only price this for X.
Yeah. And hat in hand is better than bait and switch.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
And
if you're in the middle of the job and you're halfway through the paint and come back and be like, hey, I misquoted this. I need another $3,000. They're like, well,
Good
I
luck.
guess I have to pay it.
yeah, after I give you your 1-star review, I'll finally begrudgingly pay you so you don't put a lien on my house. Right.
Yeah.
And so the whole concept is, how do I help my subcontractors build their business where we're a partnership in this, and they are doing the labor and I'm doing the management and organization and side of the business side of this. So that's what we're talking about with subs and how we price it and how we have preset pricing with them. We know what their price is. They have a chance to push back and say, I can't do it for that price. I need this. But for the most part, I'm learning what their pricing is, and I'm having preset expectations of what I know I can spend to get this done.
Well, and if I find somebody good, which is hard to do nowadays, I don't want to underprice them.
Yeah.
I want them around long term. I don't want them to be able to go anywhere else because I pay them so well.
Yep.
Right. So I'm not trying to undercut to get it as low as possible. I want this guy long term. If I find somebody great that's really, really good and makes my job easier because he's able to execute, I want to make sure that I'm paying that guy well. If I'm undercutting that guy, there's another guy coming around paying $1,000 more.
Yep, that's right. You're not going to keep them.
This is not an undercut business. Get the labor as cheap as possible. It's not that.
Yeah.
It's control of your cash flow. Going into the next one is the next separating out of subcontractors, and this is an invoicing vendor. And this one is where you're relying on the expertise of a specific trade type person that is
an expert in their field.
Yeah. And they go out, I've got with our HVAC guys, we've got a relationship with them. We know what they charge us for 1.5, 2 ton, what we know around about what the price is, that it's going to be around $9,000 or whatever it is. And so I can do what, we've talked about many times before, my desk estimate, I can put a number around there that I know is pretty close.
Yeah. If I'm doing a new build, there's 100 factors that's going to affect the price of HVAC. A, I don't have the knowledge to find every factor. And B, I honestly don't have the time to find every factor of every trade on putting together an estimate for a new build. So with that being said, like you just said, I know that my new build, and I can do a 2-ton system for $9,000 with X, Y, and Z. Great. That's what I'm putting on my quote to my customer. But here's where people miss it. We have an estimate that we agree to with the customer, but we're
literally dealing with this exact example with somebody right now.
Yeah. I have this much I quoted, $9,000 for HVAC, $30,000 for electrical, $28,000 for plumb. I'm doing a new build. I've got all of this built. I want the customer to know, once you agree to this price, I'm going to start doing all of my work. And what my work is meeting with every single vendor, every single crew, making sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed. In doing that, I am not an HVAC technician. So they might find some stuff that's going to adjust your price up or down. It might be less than this, but this is what a standard price is for this square footage and this size unit that I know you need. And so there's going to be a change in your final price between signing with us and us starting to do swing hammers.
Right.
And we explain this to the customer, say, listen, if it goes beyond 10%, you can back out of this contract. I don't miss that big. And if I did, I will let you out if you have somebody else cheaper. No problem. But what I do is I give you my best estimate as a general contractor, and then I bring in my specialty trades to get me the finalized price on anything I missed or anything that I over budgeted for. And that's going to go onto your price and adjust accordingly.
Yep.
And so that way I have the ability to bring my HVAC guy out and he goes, well, if you look, we're going to have to put this in the attic. So it's going to be a long run to get over there. That's going to be extra. We need to expand the electrical because they need to do this. So we need a new sub box to be added in. So that's going to be a lot of extra money that the electrician needs. So they can give me all that information between signature of agreement of quote and finalized quote. I can go back to the customer and say, okay, I didn't realize this is going on. that can be an uncomfortable conversation, but I'd rather have an uncomfortable conversation than not get the job at all or be out upside down on the job.
Yeah.
So that's the difference for us. A sub, I know exactly how much I can pay. Like I said, paint, handyman, framing, that sort of thing that I know, kind of set pricing that we do all the time. I pre-price it, I send it to them. The other side with the invoicing vendor, they're going to go out, they're going to look at it, and they're going to send me a final invoice at the end for odds and ends. Another good example of invoicing vendor are dumpsters, right? They $450 for the dumpster, but it's priced per pound over a certain, after 2 tons. I might have $450 I'm expecting. I know I'm going to go over a little bit, so I'm going to budget $480, $490.
Yeah.
I'm going to charge the customer, but my invoicing vendor will either invoice me for $450, $460, $475, whatever it ends up being, and they'll show me the proof of it. And I'm okay with that. I've agreed that you can send me an invoice for whatever the final price is on that one specific item.
Yeah.
But I've also budgeted knowing that a lot of times they go over $20 to $30, right? So that's kind of the difference of those two different types of 1099s, of a sub in our mind versus an invoicing vendor in our mind, and how we deal with them differently.
Well, and the reason why we're going through these and kind of closing out of like the reason and purpose of this podcast is understanding the different types of labor. Cash flow is really, really difficult in this business. Yeah. And if you're letting the people that are executing the work dictate when and where you spend your money, and you don't know, this week I'm spending X amount of money. Well, it could be more, it could be less. It depends on what my guys tell me. It depends on, I've got, 4 days budgeted with my in-house guys, but it actually took 7, and I've got that overhead cost that's increasing, right? All of those different things are making it almost impossible to know, am I successful monetarily as a business?
Yeah.
Am I making money? And so these are a way not to control people, but to control your cash flow.
Yep.
Right? I need to be able to have as much control, understanding of where my money is, what it's going to cost me, so that at the end of the job, I'm not at the place where it's like, well, at least I made 2% profit.
Yeah.
Which we see from people all the time, that they run it this way where they don't have control and other people are just telling them where to spend the money. And they get to the end of the job that they budgeted $100,000 for, and it ended up costing them $99.5 to get it executed.
Yes, but we also see the other side of that, where these guys that are one-man shows have been doing that forever, and it's the pot system.
Right.
I know I can get that job done for $85,000, and I just spend as needed. And sometimes I get it. My vendors, my cost ends up being $50, and I made $35.
Right.
Sometimes my cost is $75, and I made $10. Either way, I made money. But they're based on their intuition and what they can just, from their gut, come up with these numbers and figure out those numbers. And so it works, right? It works for me as a one-man show. But then I can't hire someone and train intuition. I can't hire someone to come work for me and train gut.
Agreed.
And so they come in, you have a new employee come in, or maybe your son takes over and you're trying to retire, and there's no rhyme or reason how we are profitable on every single job. And so it worked for you as a one-man show because you've been doing this for 35 years. You got a good gut. You got a good intuition on what it's going to take. And so it's this pot method of, I just collect all this money in the pot and I spend spend whatever's needed to get it done. As long as I can ride these guys and get it done for quickly and cheap, I'm going to make money.
Right.
But that's not duplicatable. That's not, you can't pass that to somebody else.
You can't retire out of that.
You cannot.
Yeah.
You cannot, because your brain is the decider of profit or not. And so when you hire people, everyone's coming to your brain for information.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're trying to shift is, let's create a retirable company, a company you can pass to someone, you can sell off, you can retire and have it keep running where you're working once a month. There's ways to build that to where what's happening in my brain is now on paper. This is how we ensure our costs are set and our profit is standard, and every single job happens that way.
Yeah.
So that's why all of this is important. Because
and I think what you just explained is a lot of the reason why we talk to a lot of people that's how they grew up in the business, right? Is I got my gut feeling, I'm out there, everything depends on me, I've got it managed, and I make money. They've been out there, they've made cash.
I've done 1,000 kitchens. I know exactly what it costs.
And they've got a good reputation.
Yeah.
But then they get the idea of, I'm going to grow. or I want to be able to pass this to my kids, or I want to, and they start hiring, they start bringing an office manager, they hire a couple project managers, and all of a sudden it starts falling apart.
Yep.
Because that's that's the old system, and the way that they were running works great for them.
Yep.
But it is not duplicatable. It's not replicatable. And we talk to a lot of people that they're in that spot, and they've been trying to jump the hurdle to the higher, to the growth,
Yep.
and they keep falling back, and they go over and over, and they're in that spot, and they call us and go, hey, how do I make that move?
Yeah.
Right. And that's where we dial into some of these things.
That's right.
So
if you have any questions about this, we love to talk about it. If you think we're wrong, please tell us.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear it. We'd love to have the back and forth about it. But this is kind of the goal of this, is knowing your costs prior to starting a job.
that's right.
Most of the time, a lot of guys we see, and where it fails is when you don't know my cost. I just know how much I'm charging, and I hope it works out.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're shifting. If you want help with that in your company, reach out to us. We love coaching, consulting, helping with that. Our software is killer on this. We've got ability to have an in-house in the software, how to do subs. We have separate invoicing vendors in our software, to where it puts the payment to that person in a queue, to where when you get the invoice, I can then pay the exact amount. It's a really cool software. Please check it out. ProStruct 360
Definitely makes managing all of this way easier.
You can preset all of your pricing of what you're going to pay and what you're going to charge. So every time I just type in interior paint, how many square foot, done, pricing, how much I'm going to pay, it's all preset. So I can have those conversations, get my pricing set with my vendors, with my homeowner at exactly how much I charge, and we're building our products that way. So check it out. We love to help you, whether it's coaching, consulting, free phone calls. Whether you want to come to our boot camp, come to our end of the year retreat that we do. Just start working on your company. Let us help you get started on that. Reach out to us, prostruct360.com.
So yeah.
Thank you.